3:30 a.m. ETSure, we're already checking our calendars for the start of spring football practice. But first, let's take a stroll back through the 2018 postseason. Clemson is back on top of the college football world after hammering Alabama 44-16 on Monday night in the College Football Playoff National Championship game. In the past 4 years, that gives Clemson 2 national titles and Alabama 2 national titles. Not surprisingly, both teams are well represented on the 2018-19 ESPN All-Bowl team. Here are the best performers of the bowl season. Offense quarterback Trevor Lawrence, Clemson. If Lawrence were draft eligible, he might be the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. The Tigers' true freshman sure played like a star in the college football playoff. He carved apart Alabama for 347 passing yards and 3 touchdowns in the title game. That's after throwing for 327 yards and 3 touchdowns against Notre Dame in the semifinal. He didn't throw any interceptions in either game. In the immortal words of Larry Munson, "My God, a freshman." Running back Trevor Williams, Texas A. Williams' big night was highlighted by a 93-yard touchdown run. He racked up 829 yards and 8 touchdowns in Texas A. Keyshawn Vaughn, Vanderbilt. One of the SEC's most dynamic newcomers this season, Vaughn was sensational in Vanderbilt's 45-38 loss to Baylor in the Academy Sports Outdoors Texas Bowl. He rushed for 243 yards on 13 carries and ripped off touchdown runs of 69 and 68 yards and had another non-scoring run of 66 yards. Wide receiver, J. Rahming, Duke. After falling behind early, Duke scored touchdowns on 7 straight drives, and Rahming was right in the middle of that flurry to help spearhead a 56-27 thrashing of Temple in the Walk-On's Independence Bowl. Rahming finished with 12 catches for 240 yards, including touchdown catches of 85 and 22 yards, and he set an Independence Bowl record with 286 all-purpose yards. Justin Ross, Clemson. After lighting up Notre Dame with 6 catches for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Capital One Orange Bowl, Ross was even better against Alabama in the national title game. The talented true freshman caught 6 passes for 153 yards, including a 74-yard touchdown in the third quarter that all but finished the Crimson Tide. Tight end Sterling Palmer, FIU. Palmer capped a promising freshman season with 3 catches for 64 yards, including a 36-yard touchdown late in the second quarter in Florida International's 35-32 win over Toledo in the Makers Wanted Bahamas Bowl. Offensive line tackle Mitch Hyatt, Clemson. If you're looking for a collective MVP of Clemson's rout of Alabama in the College Football Playoff National Championship game, it would be the Tigers' offensive line. Hyatt was the anchor of that unit from his left tackle spot, as Lawrence had a clean pocket to throw from for most of the game and wasn't sacked. Guard Bunchy Stallings, Kentucky. Yes, he has the catchy nickname, but Stallings also has plenty of game and was a bulldozer from his right guard spot in the 27-24 win over Penn State in the VRBO Outback Bowl. In a fitting end to one of the best seasons in Kentucky history, Stallings and the rest of his offensive line mates cleared the way for Benny Snell Jr. to rush for 144 yards and become the school's all-time leading rusher. Center, Bryce Holland, Army. A repeat selection from a year ago, Holland was a force in the middle of an Army offensive line that absolutely shredded Houston to the tune of 507 rushing yards in a 70-14 romp in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. Quarterback Kelvin Hopkins Jr. had 5 rushing touchdowns in the game, and the truth is the entire Army offensive line probably deserves a spot on the All-Bowl team. Guard Bo Benchowel, Wisconsin. It wouldn't be an All-Bowl offensive line without some Wisconsin beef. A year ago, it was Michael Dieter, and this year, it's Benchowel, who helped clear the way for Jonathan Taylor's 205 rushing yards and Wisconsin's 35-3 pummeling of Miami in the Pinstripe Bowl. The Badgers finished with 333 rushing yards and kept the ball for almost 40 minutes in the game. Tackle, Joshua Alabi, Ohio State. It's always nice to have quality depth, and Alabi looked like he'd been there all season in his first start at left tackle for Ohio State in its 28-23 victory over Washington in the Rose Bowl game presented by Northwestern Mutual. Alabi was filling in for the injured Thayer Munford and helped create a clean pocket for Dwayne Haskins to throw for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns against a stout Washington secondary. Defensive line Willie Baker, Louisiana Tech. It was a sack parade for Louisiana Tech in its 31-14 win over Hawaii in the SoFi Hawaii Bowl. The Bulldogs finished with 9 sacks, and Baker had 4 of those. All 5 of Baker's tackles in the game were for loss as the sophomore defensive end set up camp in the Hawaii backfield. Mark it down for 2019. Trevor Lawrence will win the first of 2 Heismans, while Mac Brown and Les Miles sit out bowl season in their returns. Clemson is the new king, but Alabama will be back, along with Georgia, Ohio State and Notre Dame, while a couple of teams from Texas elbow their way into the top 10. Charles Omenihu, Texas. There were no questions about who was the more physical team in Texas's 28-21 thumping of Georgia in the All-State Sugar Bowl. The Dogs didn't have any answers for Omenihu, who finished with 2 tackles for loss. He lived in the Georgia backfield and kept Jake Fromm on the run for much of the night. Quinnen Williams, Alabama. Williams was the most dominant and disruptive interior defensive lineman in college football all season, and that didn't change in the college football playoff. He didn't have huge numbers in either game, but he was a one-man pocket collapser. Austin Bryant, Clemson. There was a reason Bryant came back for his senior season along with defensive line cohorts Christian Wilkins and Clelin Ferrell. They wanted some more hardware, and they got it. Bryant had 3 tackles for loss, including 2 sacks, and a quarterback hurry against Notre Dame, and added another tackle for loss against Alabama. Linebacker James Nachtigal, Army. It was an impressive performance by Army all the way around in its rout of Houston in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl, and Nachtigal took the game over defensively with a career-high 16 tackles, including 3.5 sacks, and he forced 3 fumbles. The Cougars probably thought there were 4 no-19s on the field. Josh Allen, Kentucky. Following Kentucky's win over Penn State in the VRBO Citrus Bowl, Allen proclaimed himself the No. 1 pick in the NFL draft. He sure looked the part against the Nittany Lions, with 3 quarterback sacks and a blocked kick. Allen set Kentucky's single-season record with 17 sacks this year. Isaiah Simmons, Clemson. One of the most valuable and versatile players on Clemson's defense, Simmons was everywhere in the 2 playoff games with his blend of size and speed. He led the Tigers with 9 tackles, including 1 for loss, in the win over Alabama in the title game. He broke up 2 passes and had half of a sack in the win over Notre Dame. Nickelback Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Florida suffocated Michigan defensively in its 41-15 Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl romp, and Gardner-Johnson was a big reason for that from his Nickelback star position. His interception early in the 3rd quarter changed the complexion of the game and gave the Gators the momentum, and he culminated the rout with a 2nd interception in the 4th quarter that he returned 30 yards for a touchdown. Cornerback DJ Williams, Utah State. Williams had 2 interceptions in Utah State's 52-13 rout of North Texas in the New Mexico Bowl presented by Progressive. His 2nd pick killed a North Texas drive inside the Utah 30-yard line, and Williams returned it 31 yards just before halftime. Safety Jackie Gervis, Iowa. No play was any bigger for Iowa in its 27-22 win over Mississippi State in the Outback Bowl than Gervis's interception in the end zone in the 4th quarter. The ball was bobbled by a Mississippi State receiver, and Gervis gathered it in and returned it 28 yards to take away what looked to be a sure touchdown. Gervis also broke up 3 passes and led the team with 6 tackles. Jalen Hawkins, Cal. It's not every day that you see a game with 9 interceptions, and Hawkins had his own hat trick with 3 picks in Cal's 10-7 overtime loss to TCU in the Cheez-It Bowl. His first interception in the first quarter set up Cal's only touchdown of the game. Hawkins also had 6 total tackles, including half of a tackle for loss. Special teams kicker Tyler Bass, Georgia Southern Bass, kicked the game-winning 40-yard field goal as time expired to lift Georgia Southern to a 23-21 win over Eastern Michigan in the Raycom Media Camellia Bowl. Bass made all 3 of his field goal attempts, including a 50-yarder win the first half. Punter Tucker Day, Mississippi State Day punted 5 times for a 50.4-yard average in Mississippi State's loss to Iowa in the Outback Bowl. He had a long of 70 yards and had a 54-yarder that was downed at the Iowa 12 in the fourth quarter. Kick returner Tony Pollard, Memphis Pollard tied an NCAA record with his 7th career kickoff return for a touchdown, a 97-yarder in the second quarter in Memphis' 37-34 loss to Wake Forest in the Jared Birmingham Bowl. Pollard also had a 41-yard rushing touchdown and finished with 109 rushing yards. All-purpose Ronnie Rivers, Fresno State. Rivers finished with 286 all-purpose yards in Fresno State's 31-20 win over Arizona State in the Mitsubishi Motors Las Vegas Bowl. He rushed for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns, caught 4 passes for 33 yards, and returned a punt 41 yards. Rivers' 68-yard touchdown run late in the third quarter gave Fresno State the lead for good.